Alright guys, we're going to do something a little different here today. We're in the Kleen-Rite studio. I got a Cat 530 pump. I got some valves. I got a seal kit. Let's break this thing down, show you guys how to replace all that. So let's get to work. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to separate the back end from the front end. The back end is what actually gives us our plunger driving power into the front head through the seals into the valves, which creates the pressure. So a 14 millimeter wrench, we're going to break the 14 mil flange bolt nuts free from the bolts, and then we're going to separate that front head from the back end. So if you were in your wash, you would have to possibly disconnect some fittings, your inlet tube or your supply, and your discharge, maybe a relief valve, depending on how you have that plumbed. You might have to take some of that off. Out at the Columbia wash, we have it plumbed so that I don't have to take any of that off, and that I'm able to just take this head off without having to do any of that. So at this point I have those 4 flange bolts off. First thing I'm going to do, you can do this 2 ways. If you have the power off to your bay, you can feel free to grab your pulley and give that a spin. And what that's going to do is just give a little separation between the rear end, the back end, and your front head. And then you should be able to just go ahead and slide that right off. Now, when you get those 2 pieces separated, you might see that your low pressure seals stay on your plungers here. And that's alright, we're just going to slide those off and we're going to put them in the bad pile. Anytime I open one of these up, I'm putting new seals in it, and I'm not just replacing the low end seals. I replace the low end, the high end, the Wicks, the whole 9 yards. So we're going to just move the back end to the side for now, and we're going to focus on the front head. First thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our Cat T-wrench socket, and we're going to get the seal cases out. So just standard lefty loosey. We're going to take all 3 of these out. We're going to inspect those. We're going to inspect the O-rings themselves, and then we're going to inspect the seal faces as well. So I got all 3 out. Now you can see our high seal was stuck to our seal case. That's not a big deal. We're just going to break them free and put them in our junk pile. To get the high seal out, if it's actually still down inside the front head there, I just use a flat blade screwdriver and just carefully pop that up and out. Again, trash. And so what we want to look at is we want to look at our high seal gasket face and make sure that that's not pitted, ripped up, distorted at all. And you should be able to feel when we go to put these seals back in, it slightly clicked down in there. So these look great. Obviously it's a new pump, a newer pump. We're sitting here at a bench doing this just to show you guys so we know that that's in good condition. So we're going to set this to the side and we're going to have a look at our seal cases. We're looking for distortion or any type of pitting, scarring going on these faces. Again, they're looking in really good condition. And if you were replacing seals and they were in bad condition, you can still use them until you can get some ordered just to keep your bay up and running. It's not going to be extremely detrimental. It will affect some of the efficiency of the pump. So first thing I'm going to do when I'm doing all this is I'm going to get all of my old seals off. That way I don't have to second guess if I got them all off or if I put the new ones on yet. I just get it all taken apart first and then put it all back together at one time with all new gaskets. So now that we got all that off, I got a Cat 530 seal kit here, and I'm going to get that opened up. I typically just take a razor blade, pop that open, and then peel my seals out. So I got all my low seals out here. I'm going to set them in a stack to the side because we're going to do the highs first. Now I'm going to get my highs out. Alright, so I got my 3 highs out, and now the seal case O-rings as well. And then I'm going to set the rest of that gear to the side for now. So what I like to do is take just some cat pump crankcase oil. I like to get a little of that on my finger, and I'm going to rub that seal down with that. And then I'm going to have the seal on my fingertip, and I'm going to get that started down in that front head. Now, when you're putting these in, it's important to remember that they face a certain way. Now, on the highs, there's a rounded or hard exterior side, and the other side is open, and you can see inside that seal. The easiest way that I can remember this is springs in. So if you just keep telling yourself springs in, and by that I mean springs facing into the head, that's how you're going to put all of these seals in. Spring side in. So with that oil, you can slide them in a little easier, and I'm sure that you guys can hear in this studio booth the seals themselves clicking down in. And that means we're getting them seated fast. If you needed to, you could take a 3/4 inch socket, fits really well. Take a 3/4 inch socket, set that down in there, press that fast. If your fingers aren't strong enough to press them down in, or you're having a little bit of an issue, but I know that those are down in because I could feel them click into place. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to get that O-ring gasket on. Now that I have crankcase oil all over my fingers, they're a little slippy, which is good. And that's just going to help lubricate that O-ring up a little bit and just help that come back together a lot nicer. Now these only fit in one way, so if you're having a hard time getting it together, you're more than likely putting it back together wrong. So the easiest way to put one of these on is to get one side started, use your thumb, and or whatever combination of fingers you want to use there, get that stretched over and get it into place. And at that point you can see that's all nice and sheened up. That's that crankcase oil on my fingers all over that O-ring. And crankcase oil, we're literally using as a lubricant to make sure this rubber doesn't bind or stick. I'm back to my tool socket, my crankcase T-socket, and I'm just going to tighten those down in. Guys, we're not sending them to Alabama, or if you're from Alabama, we're not sending them to Canada, right? We're just trying to tighten that down. We want to make sure that that seal is tight, but we're not trying to smash it. There is a torque spec on that. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't get a torque wrench out. I do it by feel, and that feel is when it's tight, it's tight. We're not trying to send it home. We're just trying to make sure that those seals aren't in there moving. So just give a little snug on each one of those. And that's good. So we already have the high seals in. We already have our O-ring gaskets in and our retainers holding tight. and we're going to get those low pressure seals out. Again, you can see the spring side and then a flat side that you cannot see that spring on the other side. Same thing, I'm going to get a little oil on my fingers again, get that all coated back up, spring side in, and you can hear that click down into place. We'll get all three of these in. And as you're doing this, you're also getting that oil on the inside here a little bit, which is going to make it easier to slide the front head back onto the back end over top of this porcelain. Let's get the plunger O-rings done, and then we'll install the front head back on, and we'll do the valves when it's all in place. So I'm going to set the front head to the side here quick. Put my cap back on my oil so I don't ruin this brand new studio. Guys, I'm used to being out in the field where I can throw oil and whatever I want all over the place. Obviously, I don't want to do that in here. So, what we're sliding off here is the oil retainer and the oil wick. Alright guys, we're back. We had to make a run to the warehouse. When we started to get into this back end, we found a couple parts and pieces that need to be replaced on top of what we thought was going to need to be replaced. And that's actually a good point to make here. You know, when you're ordering your pump seal kit and your valves, you know, other things to remember are the barrier slinger washers themselves, your wick retainers. You know, it's always a good idea to at least have a couple of them on hand, at least a set to completely rebuild a pump, just in case you open it up and you have one bad, or maybe all three are bad like they are in my case. You can see here, just completely deformed, and this will not click back together to hold together the way that it's supposed to hold that wick in place so that we can get proper lubrication up on the porcelain here. So, we went and got new ones. We're back in action, so let's get some work done now. I'm going to take all the bad ones here that we have, all the deformed ones, and we're just going to take them and put them to the side. That way we don't try to use them. And we're going to continue on. If you look inside here, our barrier slinger washers here, they're all bent. These are all bent. So we're going to get these plungers off. We're going to get the retainer O-ring gasket changed out, these slinger washers changed out, and get this all back together. So just for view at home there, that's what that washer is actually supposed to look like. It's supposed to have a pan shape to it, and that pan shape always faces out. So let's get this porcelain off, let's get this stuff replaced, and get this work done. So we got a 12mm wrench here. Start backing this retainer, loosen this up some. We're going to do all three because all three of them are bent. So we're just going to loosen this a little bit. And we're going to loosen that just a little bit to the point we don't want it all the way off, because we want to take our hand, grab the porcelain, and push back to help start to separate that retainer. So you can see here, as I'm pushing these back, that's popping free. You're not going to be able to do that when it's off of the shaft itself. So you're going to want to do that ahead of time. And there went one of our barrier slingers, which is okay. Get this stuff off, and then we'll get this stuff fixed up. So next thing to do is to this is a keyhole washer. Next thing to do here is to just check your porcelain. You're looking for heavy scoring, rough edges, nicks, breaks, cracks. Just want to make sure that we don't have any of that going on this porcelain, because that is going to tear our seals up much faster. So they all look really good. got a little bit of slime going on here. I'm just going to wipe some of that off. It's not going to affect us too much in the operation, so I'm not looking to really get that as clean as possible. So I'm going to slide the rest of these slingers off, get them out of the way. So what we need at this point is 3 barrier slingers, 3 keyhole washers, our 3 retaining bolts, and our plungers themselves. So barrier slinger first, keyhole next. I'm going to take my retaining bolt, pop that in first, slide that straight in, and get that bad boy started. Now guys, there's only one way that that'll fit together. As you can see, that'll only slide in there one way. And that right there is the example of the wrong side. You should feel that click in to place. Oop. I'm talking and getting ahead of myself here. Let's get these barrier slingers on, these keyhole washers on both of these before I forget to put them on and end up with a pump that doesn't want to run right. Alright, so we got everything on now. We're going to get our porcelain on. And get them tightened down. You can put a little blue Loctite on there if you want to. I haven't really had any scenarios where I really needed it, where one of them has come loose, but if it makes you feel better about it, you can put a little blue Loctite on there and just give them a nice firm tighten down so that we know they're not going to pop off on us. So, alright, now we're going to get our wick retainers and our wicks on. Again, I'm popping that out of the package there. A small side and a large side. We want to get the long wick in the small side and the short stub in that big side, and then we're going to pop that back together. You should feel that click back together. So you can see how I have all of this lined up nicely. Your slot in the actual back portion of that retainer, the small nub of the wick in the large opening of this retainer, and that is going to slide in right like this. And it's going to sink the whole way back in to the rear end of that housing. So each one of those back together, feeling that click to ensure that that's put together correctly. Slide that back. Alright, so we got all 3 of those back in. Put back together. We got our front end ready to be put on to our back end. And something that I like to do, again, I'm a big fan of this cat oil. I'm going to take a little of that cat oil on my fingers again, since we had to run to the warehouse and run around. And I'm just going to put a little of that on each one of those porcelain plungers, just to give that a little lubrication. Now we don't want to forget our oil tray. That slips in right below those wicks, and we want to make sure that the wicks are in the oil tray itself. Now, before I'm ready to slide this head back on, a little trick I like to use is, this is just a little 5 mil liquid syringe. No needle, obviously, just a plastic syringe. And I'll actually get some of this cat oil in here. And instead of spilling it all over the place, I'm going to squirt some of that into the tray. I'm going to fill it one more time. And I just like to pre-soak these wicks a bit to make sure that I'm lubricating that porcelain. I don't want to have any issues after I get this guy back on. So I just squirt a little bit in the top of each one of these openings on that wick to get that oil started. And then obviously I got some in my tray in the bottom. And at that point we're ready to slide the front head back on. So you're just lining that up. You can see I have the two outside plungers forward and at about the same distance set in parallel here. And then I'm just going to line those up. And it should be a little tight to put together because our new seals are that tight. And we're just going to slowly work that back together. Now if it's not sliding together, obviously you can kind of walk it side to side a little bit just to ensure that you're getting that on straight. Obviously if it doesn't feel like it wants to go together, slide that back off. Make sure you have everything put on in the right order. That should slide on there fairly easy, but still tight enough that those seals are grabbing a hold of our plungers. Now I'm going to put my 4 flange nuts back on to hold the front head to the back end. And remember, that's a 14 mil wrench. Got so much oil on my fingers I can't even grab a hold of this nut too well, but we'll get it on there. Okay, a 14 mil wrench. And guys, I'm just going to tighten the top, and then I'm going to flip to the other side and tighten the bottom, just like you'd tighten a car wheel or any other flange. You want to go to opposite sides to tighten that down, and that's going to ensure that you are tightening it down or mating those surfaces at the correct angle. I don't get a torque wrench out or anything for that either. I'm just making that tight, not trying to break anything, just making sure we don't have any leaks and that the seal of the two faces comes together nicely. Okay, so now we're going to do valve replacement here. I'm going to pull one out and do it. I'm not going to make you guys sit through all 6. Alright guys, we're getting a couple things cleaned up here. We're going to jump back in, getting this valve changed out. I'm going to change one of these valves out. All the valves are the same. They're the same kit numbers for this 530 pump, your low valves and your high valves. So we're just going to change one out here on the film for you guys to see. That way you don't have to watch me do all 6. But, so we're just going to break that free. So you can see we have an O-ring here, and that O-ring's pretty flat. So we're going to change that out. Those O-rings come in that valve kit when you order that valve kit. And the easiest way I've found to get these valves out, pair of needle nose pliers, grabbing on each side of that valve body groove. I'm wiggling forward and back, and we're going to pop that right out. So if you just want to check your valves, one quick way to just check your valve is probably not something that everybody wants to do, but I just take it, pop it in my mouth. If you can feel that pressure build up and then pop free as you're blowing in there, your spring and valve seat are working properly, or is a good sign that it's working properly. It doesn't mean that it's perfect, but it is a a good sign that it's working properly. But for the demonstration, we're going to go ahead and replace this. My kit cut open here. And we'll link all the part numbers for these kits in the bottom description. That way it's easy for you guys to find. Because that's the goal. We're trying to make this as easy as we can on everybody. So, again, a little bit of that cat oil. And I'm just getting that on that bottom retainer and O-ring. Just on this. The white piece is the retainer, and the black piece is your O-ring. That's what seals. The retainer is what holds everything in position. So I just put a little cat oil on that to help make it slide down a little bit easier. And I'm just going to do that in reverse. I'm going to take that and sink that down in there. And then I always take my thumb and press down in and make sure that's sealed up nice, that it's actually sitting down in its home there. So the second part of that is I just have a little precision screwdriver here. Get that underneath that gasket. Pull that up off. I'm just going to wipe some of this. Wipe that down. And then I'm going to grab my new O-ring. And slip that over. And get that pushed down into the O-ring seat. So since I already have all that cat oil all over my fingers, I can tell I'm getting that O-ring lubed up a little bit. So we're just going to take that and pop that right back in. Take that all the way down. Try not to spill this cat oil everywhere. And then I'm just going to hold the base and give that a little tighten. Again, guys, we're not trying to send any of this stuff home. We're just trying to make sure that it doesn't leak at all, right? So that's going to take care of replacing a valve inside the front head as well. And that's it. I know it seems like a lot of steps. There are a decent amount of steps to doing a rebuild on one of these pumps. But if you break it down into small sections, doing the seals, then doing your barrier sling washer and keyhole washer and your plunger retainer, do that as a project, and then do your valves after that. Instead of taking everything apart and having parts laying all over the place, I like to break that down and do it in small sections, and it'll actually let you get it done a lot faster that way. Alright guys, that's going to finish up the rebuild on this Cat 530 pump. If you have any questions about cat pumps or any other pump that you're running in your car wash, give us a call here at Kleen-Rite and we'll get you fixed up. And drop a comment below and let us know what pump you are running at your car wash. We're curious to see what everybody's doing out there.